Alrighty, to the dump, to the dump, to the dump, dump, dump. People have been throwing stuff away for a long time. Even other organisms throw their stuff away. They take their waste and they get it out away from them, whether it's their own organic waste, which of course we classify as liquid waste because we typically flush it away, or if it's just the remains of the last meal, the little bits of bone and things like that, or shells. They typically will still have some stuff on them, some food items on them, and therefore they'll attract bugs and they'll start to smell bad. So people have all, ever since they've been eating things, obviously, they've been taking these materials and putting them in other places. One of the ways you can see this is Indian mounds. Now, most people think of Indian mounds, or Native American mounds, excuse me. They think of that they're burial grounds, which sometimes is the case, but it just basically means the remains of a civilization that have still kind of there in their mouths because they tend to be built up. Most of the time, these areas are garbage dumps, and you can actually see them out walking around in Florida quite a bit. If you see what looks like a very old pile of shells sitting up somewhere, if you're out hiking, anybody ever seen that? And the shells are very bleached out, look almost fossilized. Anybody ever experienced this? Nobody in here. Well, that stinks. But not anymore because it's decomposed. These are the leftovers of Native Americans, typically, where the shells are very durable as far as decomposition stuff. They can last for thousands of years, and a lot of these times these things are actually thousands of years old. And they're shells from oysters and things like that, of course, they ate them, and they would pile them up in a certain area, and everybody would come and put their things in the same area because it's, you want something convenient, but you want something somewhat far away from where you were living, and so you would have a common area to do that, and we would call those dumps. That's where you would dump your garbage. So ever since there's been people, there's been civilization, people coming together, they've been congregating and dumping their garbage in one particular place. So that's not new. But landfills are a little bit more high-tech than that, and one of the things that they do is they try to make things decompose faster than they normally would. And this is the high-tech solution for doing that, is by alternating waste and soil, the garbage and the soil. And they'll pile out the garbage for a day or a couple days. I don't know what the frequency is in which they do it, but they'll do that, and then they'll go and get some fresh soil and spread it over it, and then start the whole process all over again. So how's that for high-tech? That's as high-tech as dirt right there. But they actually, it took a while before people realized this, I guess, or one of those things that some people knew and a lot of people did not. But apparently in World War II, they discovered this particular concept because in war, if you're moving around and stuff, you don't want to leave any garbage behind because that tells the enemy where you've been. So they would spread out their garbage and cover it up with dirt and stuff, and they would find that it would be gone much quicker than if it had been piled together and things. So what is it, what's in the soil that's helping this process? Right here.
Bacteria.
Right, bacteria and funguses. Very good. Decomposers primarily live in the soil. As I've been stressing, this is where nature puts its waste, usually organic waste, human and animal and plant waste and everything, goes down, falls down on the ground, goes in the soil, and then it gets decomposed by bacteria and funguses. So putting that on there, and keep in mind that a lot of your waste is still food waste, but paper will also be accelerated in its decomposition, wood, any kind of organic substance, even plastics to a certain extent. There are bacteria that will eat pretty much anything. As a matter of fact, as we'll see, that's one way to try to get rid of certain waste, hazardous materials, by using bacteria. But they will break down. If you've ever, for example, had like a plastic bag or something that was buried in your yard for some reason, just happened to be out there, and you pulled it up, and it's like all falls apart. That's because it was decomposing as well. So this is the primary purpose for doing that layering, and it helps to accelerate that process. And the more decomposition you have, the less landfill space that you need, because it basically becomes carbon dioxide and water vapor goes up into the air. The other main thing that is done at a landfill that is monitored and is checked and balanced and everything else is protecting the groundwater. Because as I mentioned before, this is the #1 problem with garbage and with landfills in general is their potential to contaminate the groundwater. And this is more of a modern problem as well because, of course, we throw away stuff nowadays that is much more toxic than the stuff we threw away in the past. Your heavy metal substances, both from batteries and electronics primarily, is where we get things like that, or just things you're not supposed to throw away, like paint thinners and other kinds of things like that. Use motor oil or any kind of oil, petroleum product. And plastics will break down and decompose. Plastics themselves are somewhat toxic, and when they break down, a lot of times they form toxic substances. Yeah, Mike.
What do the special agencies do with petroleum and like paint thinner and stuff like that?
Some of them recycle them, but recycled oil for use in engines has kind of a bad reputation amongst a lot of people. Sometimes they burn it for energy. Those are the main things they do with it to dispose of it. That's the easiest way. As we'll see, used oil is considered a hazardous waste. And with that kind of thing, one of the easiest things to do is to burn it. And like I said, and it's very controlled conditions that, of course, they burn it under, so that they're not getting toxins out in the environment. But they can also harness that energy to produce electricity as well. It's a common fuel for waste to energy generators is used motor oil. Like I said, the number one thing environmentally we have to watch out for when it comes to landfills is contamination of the groundwater from this substance called leachate. And you might want to write this in your note here, is leachate is just basically rainwater or melted snow that soaks through garbage. Yum. How many of y'all have the job of taking out the garbage at your house? That's me. Lovely job. Don't you love when you pull that bag out and all this stuff drips on you and everything, and that garbage juice? Yeah, it's good stuff. So you have that, of course, on a very large scale at a landfill, and if there's toxic substances in a landfill, in any decent-sized landfill, that's going to be the case. They're soluble. Then the water can leach out the toxins from them. Remember leaching? We talked about this a little bit when we talked about soil loss through acid rain. Leaching is made when water soaks through something and pulls the ions out of it. In this case, we're talking about dangerous ions that could contaminate the groundwater. So to reduce the likelihood of that, they put down a liner, and it is typically plastic and clay, combination of both. Now, the plastic, of course, is for the most part completely impermeable to the rainwater going through it. And then the clay layer is good to reduce that volume. Clay, of course, soaks up water and other materials very well. It's even oftentimes able to pull out the toxins that are in there. And therefore, it's a combination of both as the way that they keep that excess leachate from going into the groundwater. But of course they have to do something with it, so they will have a leachate collection system, a series of pipes, etc., that direct that leachate away from the dump or from the landfill, usually to a wastewater treatment facility, or they might have an on-site treatment facility for that. So you have a leachate collection system. It's an important part of it. You never know for sure if you catch everything, though, so they will also monitor the groundwater. So you have a groundwater monitoring system, which consists of wells all around the landfill that on a periodic basis sample the water, bring the water up, and they test it in a lab and everything else like that to look for things like that. You have these monitoring wells, monitoring systems at gas stations. Matter of fact, you might see it. You'll see there's the big plates where they fill up the systems, but you'll see a smaller plate at a gas station, and if you look at it, if you're one of the people like me who looks for change on the ground all the time, it'll say monitoring well, do not fill. That would be a very bad thing if somebody did accidentally fill in there. It probably won't fit into there, but it's and like I said, it's basically a well down into the aquifer, and they dip a bottle down and pull up a collection and then send it off and analyze it. It's one of the primary things that environmental management companies do. So they're of course going to do that at a landfill. And also another issue at landfills, it's an environmental issue because methane, of course, is a greenhouse gas, but it's also, on a larger scale, it's a safety issue, and it has been the source of fires at landfills and dumps throughout history. Have had a tendency to catch on fire, and it's because of this. Anytime you have stuff that's decomposing, you're going to have methane produced. There's going to be anaerobic bacteria that break down those organic substances, and a lot of times their byproduct is methane gas. So you will have a series of pipes and things in that landfill that collect that excess gas, and they'll either burn it off. They burn it because, well, what are you going to produce when you burn that methane? What gas?
Carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide. Well, that's a greenhouse gas, right? So that's not good, right?
Well, it's preferable to methane. Right?
Very good, Michael. It's correct. It is a greenhouse gas, but it's not nearly as powerful a greenhouse gas as methane. Methane is on the order of 10 to 12 times more effective at holding energy in, and so consequently, it's better to have CO2 than not. But an even better solution is some of them will capture that and use it. You can use it in tractors and stuff like that as a fuel source, or to heat some area or something like that. So those are the many components of a modern landfill. Any questions about that? No? All right.